So thank you everybody for being here. And with all of council here, we are ready to call the meeting to order. Time is 6:01 for the special council meeting. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples, specifically the Lekwungen-speaking people known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations, and that their connections to these lands continue to this day. Up first, we just need approval of the agenda. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That passes. Then we just have one item on the agenda today. So I'd just like to welcome everybody. I'm just going to give a quick introduction and I'll hand it over to Ms. Bay, who's been managing the RFP process. This is a special committee of the whole where members of council will invite public input into the anonymous public amenities portion of the RFP responses. We'll receive the proposals, the public correspondence, and then invite members of the public who wish to address council to do so. We did invite people to pre-register, so we will go through that list first, and then we will invite other people if they wish to call in or talk to us through Zoom to do so. Just in general, I'll give some guidelines as we get to those speakers. But as always, just ask people to direct your comments through me as the chair, and keep your comments respectful of other members of the public, of our staff, and of council. And with that, I will begin by asking Ms. Bay to give an overview, so we're all on the same page before we begin. Welcome, Ms. Bay.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As was mentioned, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to invite public feedback on the 2 marina proposals that have advanced to this stage. Just as a bit of a background, I can just advise that Oak Bay Marine Group's lease with the district expires at the end of 2022. So council last September directed staff to seek proposals from entities interested in taking on a 30-year lease following expiry of the existing lease. A request for proposals for lease of the Oak Bay Marina lands and marina was issued in September, and proposals were due at the end of November. Once proposals were received, staff undertook a technical evaluation of each submission. 2 proposals achieved technical scores sufficient to have community amenity proposals reviewed. Council has previously directed that proposals clearing this threshold be released for public review and feedback. So the 2 community amenity proposals forwarded for review have been named Proposal 1 and Proposal A, and both of those are available on the district's website. We're here tonight to obtain public feedback on those 2 proposals. And just thought I'd take a minute to mention that tonight's not the only opportunity for input. In addition to tonight, the public has also had the chance to submit correspondence, and that has been forwarded to council. And to respond to an online questionnaire, which opened on February 9th and which will close tomorrow at midnight. So if you're listening and you still wish to provide input and haven't done so yet, we'd love to hear from you. We've had a great response so far and would love to hear from even more. Following public input, council will score community amenity proposals. Proponents with scores of 70% or more will advance to have financial proposals evaluated. Following scoring of each of the 3 stages of the proposals, the technical, community amenity, and financial proposals, council will determine whether, how, and with whom to advance to the negotiation stage. The RFP reserves the district's right to negotiate the terms of the lease. So that's why we're here tonight, to hear from the public, to hear what works and what doesn't. There'll be no lease unless the district and the proponent can come to agreement on terms. So that's just a bit of background there, Your Worship, on the how we landed at this point and what's to come, and how the public input is being asked for. Thank you, Your Worship. That's all I have.
Very good, Ms. Bay. Simple is good, I think, in this case. We're here to listen, not to talk. But before we begin, I just want to go through our procedural pieces here, and that is just just to receive the official information and open the dialogue for communication. So there's 3 different motions here. If I could just first move the documents in the package be received. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And then we have the correspondence, the written correspondence from the public in our package be received. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And last, that the public public feedback be invited. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So that moves us into the community amenity portion of this. So I'm going to go to the public, and what I'll do is I'll call the members of the public that registered ahead of time. I'm just going to do them in the order that they registered. That just keeps life very simple. And then at the end of that, I'm going to call to the public to call in if they so wish. Ms. Williams, may I ask that we put the phone number up on the screen so that anybody watching can see the dial-in information. You can also join us through the Zoom call and raise your hand within the Zoom call itself. So if that information can be put up on the screen. But first up, I have Mr. Dempsey, then just after him will be Mr. Daly, and then Mr. Lebkowski. You're welcome to put your video on while you speak or leave it off. It's up to you. So up first, Mr. Dempsey, welcome. So if I could also just ask everybody to state their name and their municipality of residence, just so we have that for our public record.
Great. My name is Ron Dempsey. I'm going to apologize in advance. This is my first time I've ever spoken to council or really any government entity, I think, in a long time. So if I miss any protocols or so forth, I apologize in advance. My name is Ron Dempsey. I'm a resident of Norfolk Road in Oak Bay. I've read the two proposals from the two proponents of Turkey Head Point and want to state my opinion. I'm in favor of proponent one. In my opinion, this proposal adequately addresses the need for flexible community space in the current parking area by continuing to allow room for drivers of cars to visit the waterfront. I'm involved with a group of European car and motorcycle enthusiasts known as Euro Cars and Coffee. 6 years ago, me and a few others started this group when a number of Oak Bay residents decided to gather on a Sunday morning to share each other's passions for cars from Italy, Germany, and other parts of Europe. The first informal gathering was about 12 cars on the Esplanade, but the spark was lit. Thanks to word of mouth, our strictly informal group, I want to stress that it's very informal, quickly grew. And today we have an email list of over 300 names, plus over 150 people in a Facebook group. Before COVID, it wasn't unusual to see people bring cars from as far away as Comox, Salt Spring Island, San Juan Island on a Sunday morning once per month, usually through the spring and summer. In 2019, we estimate that a few weekends we had over 120 cars gather on one of those sunny mornings, with another 100 spectators, photographers, and casual passersby. In fact, before he passed away, Nils Jensen was a regular attendee on bicycle. Our informal group has always stressed 4 key principles, and I just wanted to communicate those because I know some people are familiar with our group, but they may not know much about our background. First, inclusiveness regardless of a car's age or value. We're just proud of anybody we invite anybody who's proud of their European car, whether it's a rusty Volkswagen or a new exotic car. Second, safety and respect. We have a zero tolerance policy for excessive noise or doing anything unsafe. We recognize that disturbing our neighborhoods is an absolute no-go if we are to continue. Third, informality. Participants are encouraged to come and go as they please. There are no prizes, there's no judging, there's no membership, there's no fees. This was intentionally created as a non-club to be welcoming to everybody, and we've kept it that way. Lastly, in giving back, this past Christmas, our group raised over $10,000 for CFAX Santa's Anonymous, even though at the last minute we had to cancel our drive-through gift and giving event when provincial regulations required it in late November. As I'm sure council is aware, Oak Bay is home to a number of car enthusiasts. We have residents with some of the top car collections in the world, in fact, often hiding in garages, waiting for a quiet Sunday morning to come out and stretch their legs. If you were to ask a few of those residents, their favorite social outing is going for a scenic waterfront drive in Oak Bay and then joining others for coffee at Turkey Head Point on a sunny Sunday morning. In my view, proponent one's proposal offers the needed beautification of Turkey Head Point while maintaining a balanced need for flexible space, including parking. After COVID subsides, informal gatherings such as Euro Cars and Coffee will not only be a welcome return, but also a safe and outdoor and much needed social outlet that brings people of all ages and backgrounds together. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dempsey. Appreciate you coming out tonight and sharing your thoughts. I want to point out that Mr. Dempsey was pretty much bang on 3 minutes. We're asking people as much as possible to keep to sort of 3 minutes or a little more, but there's no official time limits here. So I'll let you know if it's going much beyond that, but we'll certainly give you the time needed for people to state what they need to state. So again, thank you, Mr. Dempsey. We'll move on to Mr. Daly, and after him we'll have Mr. Lebkowski and then Mr. Salter. So up next, Mr. Daly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Greetings from across the border in Cadborough Bay, Signage. My name is Eric Daly. I'm the chair of the Cadborough Bay Residents Association and co-founder of the Cadborough Bay Dead Boat Society. We congratulate you on moving ahead with the Turkey Head development. We are more than pleased that you're going to be addressing the entire bay. Oak Bay beyond the marina is very similar to your portion of Cadborough Bay. They are both unregulated and have been called the Wild West with serious environmental problems. However, both areas have great potential. Just imagine clean beaches and prosperity. Both Oak Bay and Cadborough Bay could be world-class destinations for visiting boaters, enjoying a variety of onshore local establishments on both sides of our border. We must get beyond waiting for boats to get blown ashore before we act. Hopefully those days will be gone forever, and this development is a new beginning for the waters of Oak Bay and Cadborough Bay. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daly. Up next, Mr. Lebkowski, then after him will be Mr. Salter. You just have to unmute yourself there, Mr. Lebkowski. I hope I'm pronouncing your name okay. Usually the bottom left, there is a mute and unmute portion on the screen. Ms. Williams, are we able to unmute Mr. Lebkowski directly? Oh, there we are. Yep. You're done. Welcome.
Okay, sorry about that. Gosh. Okay, well, as some of you may know, I have written you before. I've got a little bit of correspondence and that way. Quite active with Oak Bay for many years. I used to have a boat that that sat next to the whale splash, and I had to listen to the whale show every hour, and that was kind of interesting. You got to know all the characters, and then I moved on, and but I kept a boat in Oak Bay for, gosh, I don't know how long time. And you might have seen a big canoe that I built many years ago, and I used to sail it to Discovery Chatham Islands, and I had a tour business there and a sailing business, and I even had a boat anchored in the Oak Bay area. So I have a little bit of history, and also have a background in town planning, which got me involved in this as well. Now, I don't want to discuss the overview or the larger plan that I had presented to you, and I think you all have read. It's something that is a little more futuristic, and just stick to what we're talking about today, and that's which proposal we like and what we like about it or don't. It's quite obvious to me that proposal number one is the one that we should go with, and there's good reasons for it. Now, I'll just make a few points, some obvious points to me, anyways, that with respect to this proposal. First of all, let me just summarize what I sent you today, and we'll talk about the individual items, such as the band shell location. And my attitude, I guess, for Turkey Head is less is more, and we've got to be careful we don't overwhelm that site. And it occurred to me that band shell, it's a great idea. It's a focal point. It's a social meeting area. But I would think that maybe the location at the northern end of Turkey Head, where it'd be surrounded by green space rather than a parking lot, might work a little better. Just my feeling on that, if we do go for the band shell. The totem pole, that intrigues me because I have a background with native culture and building a native canoe and so forth. And I don't know whether, the natives were consulted on this, but I think, they should have a say here. But it strikes me that if we're looking at marine heritage and so forth, that maybe something a little more appropriate might work. One idea that I'll throw out to you, which with my canoe bent, is why not a ferro-cement boat and get the kids in there and haul up the sails and let them have lunch in it and do whatever they want. It's, it'd be a hands-on kind of thing, and it would be there, and it might remind us that, we have a connection with the ocean, and that's what I think this area, if we do anything, it should have a connection with the ocean. The other concern I had is about congestion in the area in front of the paddle sports building. And I think we got to be careful that it doesn't conflict with the needs of the mariners who have to carry their items down to the waterfront, also with emergency vehicles, and also for the trucks that bring in food. And it seems that a lot is being demanded of that area. And I have some alternatives, which I won't get into, but I think that's a design concern of mine. I'm also concerned about, I'm concerned about that area in particular. Now, the water access locations, I'm actually also a kayaker, and I really sympathize with well, not sympathize, I really would like to see further opportunity for paddle sports. And of course, nothing much was said except for the paddle sports building. And I would really hope that the three locations. Excuse me.
Sorry, thank you. Just everybody else can keep their things muted. Go ahead, Mr. Lucas. We are at 4 minutes and counting. Just
okay,
no, it's okay. Just a heads up, but you can keep going.
I'll just go quickly. So I hope that the three locations will be kept and actually enhanced. And I had some suggestions for how we can do that. And I won't get into those, but I think it's important to keep options open, because focusing everything on the one paddle sport building is going to be a bit much. Two more things. The big donut, I call it. I don't know what you call it, but it's that pier, the fishing pier, or what? Not the fishing pier, but the pier, the circular pier. I really think we can do far better than that, and maybe consider some other focal point or some other item there. And as I said, maybe that canoe idea might be another option, but I think that's got to be considered very carefully. But I really wonder why we need to have another viewpoint when we have the most perfect viewpoints all around, and to have some people standing in front of us is kind of odd. Anyways, that's my feeling on that. Now, the last thing I'd like to really push, I guess, really emphasize is, I really think that that what is needed here, and maybe hasn't happened well enough, is to have a connection with the mariners and the people that use the facilities. I wasn't aware even of the questionnaire or any of the the surveys that were going on, and neither did many of my friends. And I think that that if we can create a stakeholders group, as I described, a group that would be a connection with not only the marina people, the owners, but also a connection with Oak Bay Council through the Recreation Committee, for example. But I think it's really important that there be not just a group that appears now and helps you perhaps finalize some of the issues to do with the plan, but carries on in the future, because we haven't had this feeling of community and this communication. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to make sure that in the future that everyone gets heard, and that the mariners and people in the bay that are anchored, there's so many different groups that occupy slips, and if we can give them a voice, and then we can anticipate their needs and work with them, and vice versa. So that is the most important thing, is communication and dialogue. And if we can get a process like this in place as part of this this plan, I think a lot of us would be very happy. And as I mentioned, I think the process is the plan. So that's really what I like to say.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I took as long as I did.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think you had lots of ideas there, and it's good to get them out, and appreciate your written correspondence as well. We have more time to sit and consider the written correspondence. Next up, we have Mr. Salter, then we have then Rogers, then Taddy. So that's the order. So Mr. Salter, welcome.
Good evening, Council. Your Worship, I'm hoping you're hearing me okay.
We hear you. We hear you fine. Yes, and it's nice to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. Just for those who I caught some of the names on the list, there's some old friends and family, old friends, friendly faces in that group. Hello, I'm Mark Salter. I will now be residing at 3501 Dunlin Road Street in Cheatsmeets, Colwood, on the other side of the bay. My history with Oak Bay goes back to 1963 when I fell off the seawall and up to my waist in the water, causing my father and mother quite some consternation. In 1974, I started sailing out of that marina with one of the local skippers, Trevor Hayward, with whom I had a long sailing career and ultimately very successful. In the more recent past, I'm previously the chair of the Squamish Environmental Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission for Squamish. And post that, I was a cultural tour leader out of Oak Bay Marina in 2015, chartering a boat out of that marina for some cultural tours, which some of the council members may recall. I have been a sailor and have owned a boat in Oak Bay Marina in the past, so I did have to pass that part of the evaluation on the questionnaire. That I do no longer have a boat in there, but I might soon have a boat in there again. I have yet to move my vessel. I found the process a little rushed for me. I got the information very late, very coincidentally. But I did want to speak to two things that, from my environmental perspective. I didn't see any climate plan mitigation issues or proposals in the proponents, but I did make some observations about how they're dealing with certain environmental considerations. I haven't had a chance to go through the entirety of the proposal, but like one of the previous speakers, the idea of the whole bay being addressed seemed to make a lot of sense to me, because derelict boats are an issue. They're a health hazard as well to navigation. But I wondered where climate mitigation was put on the roster for consideration, putting a proposal forward. The current user of the facility has had the facility ever since I can remember. As a small boy, seeing the marina go in there with the new whale pools, and as a diver for Undersea Gardens in 1975, I did do some surface maintenance diving at the marina as well. So my concern is where do we sit with climate mitigation? Proposal A seems to have enough natural landscape in place that allows for that. I didn't see any mention of it in proposal A1. As far as Mr. Gentleman spoke earlier here, Al, he had some good ideas around stakeholder groups. He brought up the fishing pier. I also find that incongruent with having the most beautiful view out there. But in the survey that was put out by the proponent one, they did talk about fishing, and there was some interest in that. But of course, a fishing pier, I don't think be allowed because the fishing species that would be available at that pier location might necessarily be a protected species. Most of the ground fish in the area are under a management plan. So I don't think that would be encouraged from that perspective. So I have difficulty endorsing proposal one in so much as it doesn't seem to address climate management, whereas in proposal two, there's a lot more natural spaces available. I saw a reference to 100 cars being required as part of a contract with the city. So there's no detail of how many cars are available on top of that as far as parking spots. But in part, closer looking, there is some reduction in some parking in proposal A, as I believe. But again, square foot ratios and stuff aren't available to me. So those are the concerns I had, is about how do the proponents, were they asked to plan for climate plan mitigation? It is 30 years in the future. And from all the work and research I've done, that's an ongoing concern going forward. So I'd like to know if that's appropriate to get a reply back on. But certainly on the subject of Al put forward a stakeholder management group, I thought that there was not a lot of very genuine engagement with the Songhees Nation in the proposal one. There was references to it, but they chose a partnership with the local service club and not the nation, which I thought was a bit of a step back. There was a reference to making a boat slip available to them. They have done that in the past. That's very good. But an issue that was raised about a poll, to be specific, it's a welcome poll in the Salish cultures. And so therefore a welcome pole would be something that would be put in, or a house post. They're not, by definition, a totem pole. That's just a point of order. But I would really bring that back to where is the climate change management addressed in these proposals will be the thing that I'd be most concerned about.
Thank you, Mr. Salter. And I will say that staff will be taking note of these questions. And so we'll be posting a response that we can. Definitely not everything is covered in the community amenity portion of the RFP response, but those questions I think are all valid, and we'll do our best to through communication of those as the RP process proceeds. And of course, you mentioned you got this a little late, but there is time still to provide responses online. So by all means, please do fill in the, go through that if you wish and provide that feedback as well. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Good to see you all again.
It's a pleasure. We have next Mr. Rogers, then Taddy, then Kilpatrick. So Mr. Rogers.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. John Rogers, I'm in View Royal, a councillor there, and I wanted to give some feedback on the proposal, if I may. I'm a founding member of the Victoria Waterways Loop, and that's a 17-kilometer paddling loop around Esquimalt. It involves 5 municipalities with about 10 or 15 rest stops. And we're a volunteer organization that's had a great deal of involvement with local paddling groups and environmental groups such as the Gorge Waterway Initiatives people, and as well as the BC Marine Trails people as well. And we see the marina proposal as a terrific opportunity for ecotourism for your municipality. It can be the port of call for the Salish Sea Marine Trail, and that brings paddlers in from United States, Sydney, the Gulf Islands, and the Lower Mainland. It really has very exciting potential where people can come, shop, dine, and stay in Oat Bay. It's just so much tourist potential for you folks. We certainly appreciate the kayak rentals, the marine supply shop, the public washrooms are fabulous, as the picnic benches. I'm not really going to speak to option A or B, one or A or whatever they are, but there's a number of different things that we would like council and the proponent to consider as the plans get flushed out, if you like. First off, beach access. It's all well and good to identify the improved beach access for the point, but in actual fact, you have 2 fabulous beaches on either side of the marina. And both or all 3 of those beaches should be enhanced with stairs and a ramp. Ramp is particularly important for paddlers as they want to bring their boats down to the water, for the mobility challenged, as well as for mom and strollers. The 3 beaches, novice and aging paddlers find docks intimidating. They may lack the skill or the balance or the upper body strength. So having beaches available to come ashore or cast off from paddlecraft is really a huge benefit and very considerate. The beaches that you have, we would strongly urge the proponent to work and with Peninsula Streams, a terrific organization. Ian Bruce is the biologist with Peninsula Streams, and he's worked on a project with the First Nations up in Patricia Bay. And what he's done is created fish forage friendly beaches. So these forage fish like smelt are part of the essential food chain. So food for salmon and for orcas. And there's a particular composite of sand and gravel that they put down. Ian Bruce is working with Esquimalt, View Royal, Victoria to apply, if you like, sandy beaches, both for the fish in the wintertime and for paddlers in the summer. And we would certainly urge the proponent and the Oat Bay to work with Peninsula Streams and improve, make sure that those beaches are improved to the utmost. Paddle recreation for people that live in the CRD that want to come. We found that in the Victoria Marine or Victoria Waterways Loop, having access points that are clearly identified, that where there is sufficient parking, where paddlers can come close to the shore, take their kayak down to the beach and enjoy 4 hours of paddling. And I can't think of anything better, and I've done it before, but paddling along Oak Bay's shoreline is really, really super. I also want to point out that paddlers using the beaches enable them to stay clear of the busy marina with large sailboats and powerboats coming and going. This is actually a major deterrent of Victoria's Fisherman's Wharf. It's way too busy and daunting for paddlers, and we're trying to get a beach next door for paddlers to come ashore there. Hitching posts and kayak storage lockers. When paddlers come in from, let's say Saanich or Sydney or the Gulf Islands, they really want to be able to have a safe place to store their kayak as they go in and enjoy the restaurant facilities in the new marina. I'll give you an example. A 4 Mile pub in a Port Arch Trail between Esquimalt and the Gorge, they are going to be putting in kayak racks so that paddlers can safely store their kayaks and come in for a bite to eat. Also, there are storage facilities in town now that have lockable rental kayaks. So these are lockers for kayaks, and they're lockable. And if you can imagine an ecotourist coming in from, say, the Lower Mainland, they're able to lock and go, put their kayak in that locker, and then go to their hotel and have some carefree shopping on Oak Bay Avenue, or take a bus into Victoria and enjoy the sights. I really do think that Oak Bay has this extraordinary opportunity for regional tourism through the marina. And as part of that, wayfinding.
Mr. Rogers, we're just well over 5 minutes now, so it's okay. There's no time limit, but just ask if you could keep your points as brief as possible, so everybody has a chance to speak.
And my last point right now, wayfinding signage is really useful for paddlers. Oak Bay Marina could be in context of the other locations, other local beaches that have amenities like parking and washrooms. It can put itself on the map with a Sailor Sea Marine Trail, and it also can be relevant to the Victoria Waterways Loop. You can have QR codes as well as the brochures of the two marine trails, and it would be really fabulous. So basically, I'm really suggesting that the marina can be Oak Bay's supportive call for paddlers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. Up next, we have Mr. Taddy, then we have Kilpatrick, and then Graham and Armitage. And that will conclude our pre-registered residents. So if anybody wishes to just raise their hand within the meeting or to call in with the number shown, they will be welcome. So Mr. Taddy, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you clear. Thank you very much.
Good. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and I'll try and be really brief. I'm assuming that you will have all read my letter and those of others, those contributions of others, or you soon will. My main concern is the marine environment surrounding the marina. Proposal 1 appears to talk about their willingness to work with Oak Bay in the details in a technical report, and Proposal A seems to carry on with the status quo, with the exception of contributing financially to Oak Bay for their share of clearing up abandoned boats or sunken boats. I think it's way beyond time for us to take charge as citizens of Oak Bay and as a municipality of trying to lead the federal government, the provincial government, and of course First Nations in getting this area protected. And I'm talking about from Turkey Head right through to Cattle Point. I know that sounds ambitious, but when you look at the eelgrass report that is just sort of there, when you look at the migratory bird report and all of the other information that councils have had over the last 10 or 15 years concerning the sensitivity of habitat in these areas, It's time. We hear of, I'll try and be really brief, but I know of having watched all of you work very, very hard and had a fairly close seat from volunteer activities. I know how committed you all are, but I also hear about a lack of resources all the time. And I believe we're making that an excuse. This is a multi-year project. Even getting the bay and the surrounding waters leased and protected, it is multi-year, and somebody has to lead it and start it. I ask you to sort of close your eyes at some point and imagine what this area is going to look like in 30 years if we don't start the initiative. And imagine what it can be if it's a protected area. It struck me when I started volunteering at Oak Bay that in the orientation, something that has stayed with me since day one, and I know you're all committed to, is that our duty is to protect and to make Oak Bay better for all its citizens, for the future citizens and those not yet born. And that's what this 30-year situation is. I encourage you to do everything you can, even though it's challenging, it's complex, and you have many, many, many other issues that you're dealing with, to find the resources and leadership to start the process. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tuddy, for all your thoughts on that. If I can invite Mr. Kilpatrick to speak, and then have Mr. Graham and Mr. Armitage following. Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. My name is Bruce Kilpatrick, and I reside at 2507 Epworth Street in Oak Bay, where it looks like the light is not as great as it is in some of the other parts of our municipality, but I'll deal with that later. I'm of settler origin, and my family and I have lived as guests in this part of the territory of the Lekwungen people for the past 29 years. I really appreciate the opportunity to address council on this important initiative tonight. It represents an incredible opportunity for our community, but also a weighty decision for you. And I also appreciate that you were working with a challenging timeline. I took advantage of the online survey to provide specific feedback on the two proposals. In general, proponent one, I think, has a more developed vision for the site and gives a better sense of how it will create a vibrant addition to our community. And to some extent, it acknowledges the history of the land and people who occupied it. While it could still use some adjustment, I believe it is the stronger of the two. But tonight, I really want to focus on my two main concerns. Number one is the involvement and participation of the Songhees Nation, and two is the time frame of the decision-making process. Because of the timeline you've been operating with, I'm concerned that there hasn't been sufficient time for you to engage with the Songhees people in a meaningful way, to explore the potential for collaboration and partnership on this site, and to determine the extent of their interests and expectations around that. This initiative is one of the most significant opportunities to advance reconciliation that we'll have in Oak Bay in the near future. And the decisions to be made will essentially lock things down on the site for a generation. I urge council, once it has selected a proponent, to make full use of the negotiation phase to work with the Songhees to determine their interests and desired role in the future of the land. And because of the time frame for decision-making in the 30-year horizon you are working with, I also urge council to use whatever means or mechanisms are at your disposal to give yourselves the time to do it right. You'll be deciding the future of this land for a period exceeding many of our lifetimes. Please don't rush it. And this initiative has really broader implications as well. The redevelopment can be an important part of a larger process of reconciliation with the Songhees and Esquimalt peoples, whose land, it's important to remind ourselves, we have taken, on which we have prospered. This can also be an important step toward building that stronger relationship between us that I know from conversations that I've had with some of you is as important to you as it is to the community. Thank you.
You stopped faster than I was expecting. I had my hand hovering over the mute button. Thank you, Mr. Kilpatrick, for your thoughtful comments there. We will just get everybody who's not speaking to mute. That would be helpful. And then we're just going to go to Mr. Graham and then Mr. Armitage, and then we'll go to guess I'll call them open lines. Anybody else who wishes to speak to us, you can call the numbers on the screen now. That's the simplest thing. And then we'll just hit *9 once you're in to raise your hand, and we'll call on you by your number as we go forward if you call in. So up next, sorry, Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
We can, and welcome.
Yeah, thanks very much. Ian Graham, I'm 2615 Dean Avenue, just a block from the Oak Bay border in Saanich, former resident of Oak Bay, and made a written submission. I see it's on page 2 of the additional correspondence section of your agenda package. And I just thought I'd highlight a few points out of that letter. Just regarding the 2 proposals, I think, there's some good concepts in both, but based on the district's RFP document, I do think proposal 1 is the better proposal. The proponent appears to have made an effort to do some survey of the community, better understand public values and respond to the feedback. It comes across to me as more comprehensive, more clarity around commitments and timelines. But that's just a sort of a general, just comparing the 2 generally. I'd just like to make a few observations, one of them around parking. I do find that both proposals still seem to make only minor changes to large parking areas that dominate the upland site. And I really feel that the district must insist and invest in reconfiguring this area into a place where people and pedestrians are central rather than parking and automobiles. Mr. Salter, referenced climate change, and the term of this lease is going to extend into the 2050s. And 2050 is the date that Canada is committed to net zero emissions. So I think, putting that into perspective, we really need to, I'm not suggesting that we remove all of it, but I just ask you to be bold in maximizing the public benefit, future generations, people in the environment over cars and asphalt. The second thing is, I note that both proponents identified paddle sports and recreational rowing as important activities and committed to a paddle sports center or an ocean paddling center. And I think in concept, I think this is a really great, it's a really great idea. Mr. Rogers has mentioned some of the opportunities there with paddling. But rowing and paddle sports are what you would call a AAA activity. All ages and abilities. It's a healthy activity, affordable. It's more congruent with your climate change goals and policies. Coming back to that, and I think it helps to offset some of that current inequity at the site, whereby most of the lease area is occupied by relatively expensive power and sailboats. So if you're looking at expanding public access, I think this is a really good way to go. Source potential as well. The one comment I would make is I would like to see a greater emphasis on providing public access and public space, so that paddling rowing center, for individuals, nonprofits, clubs, rather than the focus, which seems to be more on the for-profit enterprises. And to clarify, I'm fully in support of small business ventures. They provide welcome services, vitality, and activity. But the primary focus, I think, should be to expand public access rather to intensify for-profit activity there. And I think, Recreation Oak Bay could be actively involved by helping to facilitate partnerships with the successful proponent, private operators, clubs, and organizations. One of the things that COVID has taught us is that recreating indoors in confined spaces doesn't always work. So you've got a really great opportunity here. This could be an extension of Oak Bay's outdoor recreation center, where where the district is actually a partner and not simply a contract administrator for the site. Another quick point. I am a little disappointed with the approach to the public participation that Oak Bay's followed during the lease. Given the structure of the RFP, and you can confirm this with staff, but I expect that there is fairly limited opportunity to further shape what will eventually be in that lease agreement, just by the nature of the legal constraints of the RFP. And I think that given the size of the property, the public ownership, it's a provincial asset actually. unique waterfront setting, the 30-year duration of the lease, regional significance, the number of stakeholders, indigenous values. I would have favored a much more rigorous and sort of proactive program of participation at the front end, rather than where we're at now, I think, which is sort of at the back end. It typically generates more ideas, innovation, partnership possibilities, and that long-term vision for the future, kind of thinking about 2050 and beyond. Three other really quick sort of details is one thing that isn't referenced in either of the proposals, I couldn't find it, is just the old marine ways, the boat haul out that's on the foreshore near the BC Transit pullout. So I don't think that's referenced, and I think it'd be great to see that removed and the foreshore rehabilitated. I think you'd have to work with provincial and federal agencies, but maybe that's more of something that Oak Bay could do, would help lead. That's one thing. The boat ramp adjacent to Queen's Park, I think it needs some attention. I don't think it's an appropriate location for launching big power boats, and it isn't used as such currently. But it could be improved for better public access, small dinghies, for example, small boats. And then, as been mentioned, the area with the mooring buoys. I really favor a more active management and regulation of the area. It's a highly productive, valuable area. There are some long-standing issues with derelict boats, and so I just ask you to look into that. So those are my comments, and thanks again for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. I really appreciate your comments and for providing some of those thoughts in writing as well. It helps us take them away and distill them in a more detailed fashion. So up last on our pre-registered list, we have Mr. Armitage. And then again, we'll go to anybody who's called in or come into the Zoom call and raises their hand through that process. So go ahead, Mr. Armitage. You are muted currently. There you go.
There we go. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors. This is a glorious occasion for those of us who have been interested in the coming to a head of Turkey Head as an issue. I'm also speaking today to not only on behalf of Community Association of Oak Bay, but to rectify the death notice that was in the paper last week in my name. I'm clearly not that person, in case anybody was concerned. So I want to just recap briefly what we did as a community association in 2017. We had a process of public engagement regarding the entire shoreline of Oak Bay, which is in a way, you can see it all from Turkey Head, and many of the issues come together at Turkey Head. But the shoreline of Oak Bay is a unique wild urban interface waterfront in the world. It's no accident that this was a prime habitation site pre-contact. It's a jewel, and Turkey Head is the jewel in that particular jewel. So we had a process of public meetings in 2017, and just very briefly, some of the observations that came out of that around Turkey Head itself were that A, people were astonished that it was a public asset. B, they were then appalled at how underdeveloped and poorly and crudely developed it is. And then C, started to get excited about some of the possibilities, but mostly they were in the realm of what is already knowable. For example, well, we have a chunk of land, let's just have more green space and more park instead of parking lot, because the parking lot was created for tour buses for the marina. That's not already needed, no longer needed. So as a result, we can look at the two proposals that are before us and compare them against some of the results of our consultation process. But that isn't to say that that's all that we want as citizens to see coming out of a consultation process. We also would look to see for something more inspirational, something new and unforeseen. And hopefully whatever proposal is selected, there is scope for negotiation, ongoing negotiation, massaging, evolution of whatever proposal comes out of it. But it would seem that if you wanted to compare the two schemes before us, that number one would more closely match up with the results of our consultation process. I don't want to be drawn into, however, giving a preference on behalf of KOP. I just wanted to, those are really my remarks as far as the KOP process is concerned. Now, for myself as an individual, as you know, I'm an architect. I'm interested in the public placemaking that goes into any proposal. It's very clear that the first proposal, number one, hired as an outside consultant, a landscape architect. Their approach is very much a land, and you can look at water as a form of land, as a very dispersed land-based analysis. The second proposal, proposal A, they clearly hired an architect because it's clearly a retail commercial property development driven kind of proposal. They want to maximize opportunity for rents. So they want to push out onto the water to create a floating market. They want to create a coffee shop on a sliver of land / water lot that might be available. And is extremely vague about everything else. One of the great things about that proposal A, from my point of view, is that it nailed down what they thought was an appropriate parking count of 100. Much, much less than what is there now. I think we can use that as a realistic guide for how much asphalt we really need there. Another really good design innovation that they proposed was a much more generous ramp down to the marina. It's one of the great attractions of Turkey Head is we are land-based people today, but we are drawn to the water's edge, we're drawn to the edge of the land, and we're drawn to go out onto the water, and the marina is one place we can do that. But at the moment, it's very convoluted and awkward. So it would be marvelous to have a more gracious and inviting way of doing that. It might be problematic, though, to have a floating market out there on the water.
Mr. Armitage, I'm just going to give you the same courtesy. We're about 5.5 minutes in. There's
Okay.
no limit on what you have to say. I'm just letting you know where you're at in terms of time.
Yeah, I'm not rambling at random. This is a well-prepared selection of comments here. I did make some comments on the questionnaire as well. What is clear and what proposal A throws up is that, in a way, the genius of Turkey Head is the fact that it has a wild side and a culture side. It has a wild landscape side with a view of the ocean, the horizon, and that's where the big storms come from. The other side is a protected waterway, cultural properties, cultural practices. And then to break that flow, if you like, with a coffee shop, right at the point where the general public get to enjoy the view of the marina and the bay beyond, which is Oak Bay, seems like privatizing the primary asset that we have. It seems like a major sticking point in my mind. So in a way, if you just look at Turkey Head from the point of view of let's accentuate what is land and what is water, let's accentuate what is wild and what is the culture side. Perhaps the Spuhung Park proposal from Proposition 1 is useful, but maybe it should be spun around 90 degrees to encapsulate that portion of the point. The primary site, the most precious part of the site is the portion from the restaurant towards the point itself. Maybe that should be reserved as public reserve for green space, for perhaps some future intercultural a longhouse or a carving shed or a boat launching kind of activity, but not not be privatized. I'll skip most of my remarks. And so I think that long term, and I echo the comments of earlier presenters, this is not a 30-year lease. This is 60, 90. 60 years ago, photographs of the site, you didn't see any trees. Look at them now. Those trees are quite remarkable because what they do is they show where the land really is and what is land and what is fill. We should be thinking in the same kinds of timeframes, 60, 90 years. In 80 years' time, we can expect a 4-foot sea level rise. We should think about that now. We should be berming up the edge, planting trees on that berm to create a microclimate and so on. So yes, take your time, think long-term, and part of that long-term thinking has to be that this is an opportunity for nurturing an intercultural partnership process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armitage, for your thoughtful comments, and to all the speakers who have who pre-registered and joined us here today. I have one of the speakers raised their hand for a second time of speaking. And just before I go there, I just want to go to Ms. Williams. Is there anybody that's the first-time speaker that has indicated that they wish to speak for a first time?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, not at this time.
Okay, so I'm happy to go back to Mr. Salter. I think you want to speak a second time. You have your official hand up within Zoom here, and you've unmuted. So welcome back, Mr. Salter.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Just a point of order, and Mr. Armitage, well presented. I just want to make sure I have proposal 1 and A, and I think when he spoke, I got the impression he had them reversed. I'm not sure. Proposal 1 is the more built-up site that he spoke of, but I just found that his comments seemed incongruent with what I understood.
So what I can ask everybody, if they have written notes, feel free to just send them to us via email, and we'll have those on our records as well. That'll make it a bit more clear. I'll just leave it at that.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure, because he made some very good points. I just want to make sure that there's everything matched. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Salter. So I'm going to invite anybody else who wishes to speak at this time to, again, if you're watching and you wish to call in, you can call the numbers there, or if you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand if you wish to speak. And if there's no more, then I'm happy to, we'll call this portion of the public input to a close if there's no more members of the public who wish to speak. So I'll give it a minute here, or just 30 seconds, to see if anybody else calls in or raises their hand. And Ms. Williams, I'm going to just trust that you will speak up if somebody has called and is indicating they wish to unmute.
I will. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a no. As was pointed out, there are still the opportunity to provide feedback to council, either online or through email. So please take advantage of that if you wish to reach out. That will form part of our consideration as we go through the evaluation process. I will say this has been a very valuable experience, I think, on behalf of all of council, just to hear people's voices and to see the written submissions. All of this matters. It's really important to us to understand what it is that the community wants and think of innovative ways that we can best use this site. So I just want to express my appreciation for everybody who's participated this evening. And with that, Ms. Williams, any last minute callers?
No callers, Your Worship.
Okay, then I just need a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Sorry, people have disappeared off the screen, so I can't see everybody at the same time. Just because of that, if there's anybody who wishes to speak on the motion, I will take it. But if not, I will call the question. All those in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. We are adjourned, and we look forward to seeing with you.